Good Monday morning, December 12th. It's the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which I know nothing about. I really don't. I know it was the apparitions occurred in Mexico, Guadalupe, I guess. Well, of course, in the 16th century, yeah, I think 1561. I think that's the date. And by the way, the site right now where the apparitions occurred is the most visited site, I believe. I read it in Wikipedia, you know that book, is the most visited site in the world. Isn't that interesting? And I believe because of Our Lady's apparitions at Guadalupe, that she's the patroness of America. You couldn't do better. I mean, the perfect mother figure who gives rise, in this profound sense, to a redemptive continent. Whatever else is true about America, for all her sins, I think of slavery and genocide of the Native American culture, like people, it's been a land of redemption for the vast majority of people of the world. I think of myself in that regard because I'm a son of an immigrant and grandson of immigrants. And when I look at the world around me, everyone I know who, especially where I grew up, they were either children or grandchildren of Italian immigrants and Jewish immigrants. All my classmates in high school, almost every Jewish kid had no more than a grandson, and maybe even just a son or daughter of immigrants, Jewish immigrants who had escaped from, in my time, they would have escaped from Russia. Not from Germany. They would have been. We were born in 1941, so they would have come here in the 20s. They were escaping the pogroms of Russia. And it's a great story of redemption. Mary is the mother of the Redeemer, and in many ways, she's the redeemed mother of this nation. This nation was founded on the Isaiah prophecies, as it were, the New Jerusalem. And when you look at the name of the cities and the towns, especially on the East Coast, a powerful influence of the Puritans. And I'm not saying all the good, there wasn't some horrors involved, there's some really serious things. However, genocide toward the Native American, indirect cultural genocide, being honest about it. We can go into that some other time. But what you have is a sense of redemption. This was the New Jerusalem. So all your cities, New Haven, New York, New Bethlehem, what do you think they came from? New, like new in the grocery store? It meant new in the biblical sense, the messianic sense. And Mary is the quintessential mother of the Redeemer. She's the mother of the land. I mean, that our devotion to our Blessed Mother is not in vain. You won't hear me say that very often because I'm not a great fan of devotions. But with our Blessed Mother, it's a devotion to a mother who gave birth to a redemptive people, a Redeemer and a redemptive people, a people of hope. In Mary, we have hope because she gave birth to the Son, because she trusted the Word of God. I think of the image of Mary standing in John's Gospel. We got Luke in the reading today. Luke's famous, okay? Fiat voluntas tua, your will be done, okay? Boy, does she have to live up to thy will be done when she stands at the foot of the cross. In John's Gospel, what a portraiture of faith. The mother of a Redeemer, standing, not cowering, standing despite Michelangelo, okay? At the foot of the cross, trusting her Son, the Redeemer, dying the death of a criminal. Think about that. And with her are the women, her friends, Mary Magdalene, the other Mary, and John. I don't think John could have written that gospel 30 years before. He had to live and see the crucified church, and how the church, who is Mary, stands in the front of martyrdom and doesn't blink. John had lost all his friends. The apostles were all dead, all but him. When he writes this thing, he's the last of the apostles. Right? Luke gives you the great story of the incarnation. John gives you the passion. And Mary stands at the foot of the cross. She stands. She represents, she is the mother of the church. She is the church in the face of Good Friday. She is the church suffering, but in the silent devotion and prayer and trust. Okay? She is the mother of the redeemed and the Redeemer. The Redeemer and the redeemed. And I think of her as the mother of America. I do believe that. I'm a son of an immigrant. There's a lot of criticism, and I accept the criticisms. The prejudice, the bias, slavery, post-slavery world, America, yes, and still the problems we have are huge. The genocide of the Native American, I fiercely accept all that, and with anger, okay, and all the rest. On the other, nobody said that the redemption was going to lead us to innocence, but to hope. That evil is not triumphant. And America stands as a symbol of the redeemed humanity. People flee to America, came to America, flee to America. I'm using poor grammar, to be free of the slavery of impoverishment and hopelessness. My father came here to have a chance, and so does all the rest. They came to have a chance to be free, not condemned by the past. If my father hadn't come here, well, first of all, I wouldn't exist. But the second thing, and I got a personal interest in this, he would have been stuck in Italy. In a beautiful part of Tuscany, he would have been a peasant. Now, grant you, he came here and he wasn't exactly, a wealthy man. He was a first-class waiter in a first-class restaurant. But his son, he married a college graduate, my mother, school teacher, who also came in, whose parents, my mother's father, came from the same village. That's the only way my father knew who my mother was when he met her, because he knew my grandfather from the village. They lived next door, 2 houses apart. You have to be there to see it. But what he did was, his sons are college grads, one's a college professor, me. Where else in the world would that have happened? It would have been taken 2 more generations for that to have ever occurred in his home in Italy. It wouldn't have happened. We would not have had a bad life, but we would have never had the great adventure we had, the life we've had, and that's because of America. Just on my mother's side, for instance, she was born in roughly 1905, okay? She went to college in 1922, teacher's college, became a teacher, okay? My Uncle Giulio was born 13 years later. He went to Yale, one of the finest universities in the world. He probably had to learn English in kindergarten, taught by the Italian nuns who taught him to speak English. I'll bet money on it. My grandparents didn't speak English. Huh? He went to Yale. Think about that. The finest university in North America, arguably the top 5 in the world. Okay? That's America. My mother, the first feminist. No, my grandmother was the first feminist. She made damn sure that my mother was educated. And my aunt. My aunt was a secretary. But my mother, because they had to play that Italian game, okay, my mother was allowed to go to college. And then when my brother and I were born, after 4 or 5 years, my grandmother made sure my mother went back to teaching and had a professional life. Talk about feminism. Madalena Vitali, she is the feminist. And my mother couldn't boil water. Her idea of a good day was a good evening was certainly not cooking a dinner. She wouldn't know how. My father was the chef. My grandmother was the cook. She would rather go to the Schubert Theater to see opening night of My Fair Lady. Okay? My mother's idea of a good evening was reading a good book. She learned to cook in her 80s after my father died. That's a true story. I come from a feminist home. That's America. That's the Blessed Mother. She gave birth to a nation. See? She gave birth to the Redeemer and the Redeemer and a Redeemer nation, a redeemed nation, a nation of redemption. She gave hope. She gave hope. This nation, our Blessed Mother and this nation, gave hope to peasants. They turned peasants into kings, peasants into professors. That's the truth. There's an opening line in the movie The Godfather when the old man, the undertaker, says, I believe in America. It's in America I made my fortune. I believe that line. I believe in America as I believe in our Blessed Mother, because I believe in redemption. And this is the land of redemption. Flawed, but still the land of redemption. Thank you, our Blessed Mother. Thank you for coming to Guadalupe. And thank you for nurturing us as a nation of redeemed and redemption.